Today I'm going to talk about some tips on how to survive medical school, and I'll try to keep it as simple as possible. Perhaps some of these tips might be useful to some of you. I'll give you an example of what I did during medical school. I loved whiteboarding. It's basically what it sounds like. You have a whiteboard. It could be a small whiteboard. It could be one of those huge whiteboards that cover the span of this entire wall behind me that some medical schools like to provide to their students. Every day after lecture, I would go to one of those huge whiteboards in the study lounges and I would write down every single piece of important information that I got from lecture. For example, I'd write maybe 5 to 10 very important bullet points, and then I would say it to myself, and then I would explain what I just read to my study buddy. That way, I would understand what it is that I'm writing. I would have all the important information written out on my whiteboard, and I fill the entire whiteboard. I can show you some examples here. And then I would explain it to my study buddy to really solidify that information. So I would be able to, one, understand all the important topics, and two, memorize them, because memorizing is quite an important part of medical school. Not just understanding the information, but memorizing itself. If you are not good at memorizing, then you need to figure out some techniques that might work for you in order to help you retain that information, because the information that you are tested on in medical school will show up later on. For me, in particular, I like to have just one study buddy who's as serious as me and is willing to just focus on the material during our study sessions rather than talking about things that are not related to medical school. A little bit of chit chat here and there just to refresh ourselves is okay, but other than that, I like to have someone who's as serious as I am. It really helps to keep me on track, and we can finish our work in a timely manner as well. Whiteboarding, I must add, is quite a time-consuming process. It can be quite tiresome to write everything down that's important, because pretty much everything is important. Sometimes I draw my own diagrams in order to help simplify the information or create an outline, and this takes quite a bit of time. For my study buddy and I, it took us about, it could range from 2 to even 6 hours, because we're not just whiteboarding, we're discussing the material actively together and quizzing each other and asking each other questions that we have and trying to figure out the answers to those questions. So it's quite a time consuming process. I would also remember to look at my whiteboard every single day. So I would fill up my whiteboard, discuss everything with my study buddy, we would quiz each other, we'd ask each other questions, and at the very end, I take a picture of the entire whiteboard so I have it saved. And every single day, I would look back through my phone at those whiteboard pictures, and I would go over everything, make sure I recall the information, and I would do it without looking as well. So, for example, if lecture number 1 was about heart attacks, then I had everything about heart attacks written on there from lecture, and I would not look at my phone, and I would just talk to myself in my room and say everything that I wrote on the whiteboard. And then I'd look back to make sure I didn't miss anything, and if I did, I'd go over it again. And this wouldn't take that long because I had already worked on memorizing and understanding everything from day 1 with my study buddy. So it would take at most maybe, I don't know, I'd say 5 to 15 minutes to go over the previous day's whiteboard. So I would do this every day. Whiteboard, discuss, quiz each other, take picture whiteboard, next day, new whiteboard, and also look back at the old whiteboard and see if I remember everything. Then I keep doing that for the whole week, and by the time Friday came around, I already memorized all the information from that week. And on Friday, I would just go over my whiteboards. I basically had everything memorized and I went through everything. I understood it well. Keep in mind that what works for me may not work for you necessarily. It's important to try different study techniques out, at least in the first semester of medical school, and see what really works for you. Whatever works for you, stick to it until the very end is what I would suggest, instead of playing around with different techniques halfway through, unless you really need to. And make sure you have a set study schedule. For example, I would wake up every day, even on the weekends, at 6 a.m., and I would go to bed exactly at 10 p.m. unless I really wanted to study more or quiz myself. Sometimes my study buddy and I would go until 2 a.m. in the morning, but I would still wake up at 6 a.m. the next day. So make sure you have a set study schedule from this time to this time, I'm going to go to lecture. After that, from this time to approximately this time, I'm going to study XYZ with my study buddy, gonna have lunch, etc., dinner, whatever. Make sure you stick to that schedule. If you go off track or you miss a day or two, sometimes it could be quite difficult to catch up. So stick to your schedule. And on Saturday, Sunday, I would not touch my books. I would not touch lecture material because I already went through everything. So that's peace of mind for me. I stayed on track. Saturday, Sunday, that is solely for relaxation. I would go to the beach with my friends. I would go to a new restaurant with them, or we would just walk around. We would exercise together, and it was nice because there was balance. I had a study life and I also had a social life. That brings me to my next topic. Balance is incredibly important in medical school. It's so important in preventing physician burnout and even medical student burnout. I've seen quite a few medical students get burnt out from the first semester. You do not want that to happen to you, especially since you're being bombarded with so much new information every single day. So having balance is very important for your own mental and even physical, emotional, psychological well-being. I'll talk about that in a separate video. And now I'd just like to give you all some general advice. Never ever take any piece of information in medical school for granted. You never know if that small piece of information could help save someone's life in the future. And I know it sounds dramatic, but I've spoken to physicians before that I've worked with, and they've said the same thing. Never take any piece of information for granted because it could be useful in the future as a doctor. And hey, you're in medical school because you love to learn, right? This is a lifelong learning process. You will never stop getting quizzed or tested. You will continually learn new information through research, through your textbooks, through your lectures, and even when you become a doctor, it's a constant learning process. So get used to it. And don't just get used to it, but also be excited for it. If you see medical school as a hump in the road that you just have to get over in order to be a doctor, you're going to get burnt out quite quickly. So you need to change your mentality of, oh my god, medical school is so stressful, I have to learn all of this information, how is this going to be useful, I'm not even interested in cardiology, I want to go into dermatology, I have to learn all of this stuff. Hold on. We are so blessed to have the opportunity to be in medical school, an opportunity that a lot of people wish they had. So why not make the most of it? Stop complaining, because complaining is not going to really do anything for you, and just change the way you think and approach the material. And I know it's easier said than done, but trust me, you can do it. I've done it myself. Do not hesitate to ask for help. The earlier on you realize that you need help and you ask for it, the better off you will be, instead of continually struggling on your own. Talk to your peers, talk to tutors, talk to counselors. A lot of medical schools provide counselors and other medical student tutors who you can talk to if you're struggling and you need help. Having someone to talk to about your academics or even the stress that you're under can be quite helpful. We all need that sort of guidance in our lives. If there's something that you don't understand, even if you've tried to figure it out on your own, ask right then and there. Don't wait and think, oh, I'll figure it out later, because chances are you won't. A lot of new information comes up, situations arise that you didn't expect, and then you might forget about that thing that you had to figure out. So, if there's something that you don't understand, try to figure it out on your own. If you can't, ask a friend. If they don't know it, ask somebody else. Ask your professor, anyone. And then write it down so you remember it. Because even though you think, oh, I'm definitely going to remember this, I talked to the professor about it, chances are a week or two down the line you're not going to remember. So write it down. And if you do find the answer to your problem, share it with your peers who are also struggling with that concept. It will not only help them, but it will help you solidify that information as well. So these are just some general tips on how to survive medical school, if you will. I'll be making more detailed videos, but I figured I might as well just start with something more basic. So hopefully this was helpful to some of you. I also wrote more about how to study in medical school with my exact study schedule with the times. I wrote that on my blog and I'll link it down below. So if you have any questions, whether you are a high school student who's interested in medicine, a pre-med, or a medical student currently, feel free to ask me your questions in the comment section below, and if you're too shy and you don't want to post your question in public, that's okay. You can DM me on my Instagram, and I'll link that down below as well. All right, happy studying, everyone!